What's up, guys? I got a bit of a different video for you today. This is gonna be a play-by-play of a match that I played um, over the weekend um, at Grey Ogre Games. There was a kind of interesting situation at the end of this game that I just want to quickly go over. I think it's quite an instructive situation for Legacy. So I'm here on the right playing Death Shadow. My opponent is on the left playing Black Green Depths, like the more slower version with Reclaimer and Dark Confidant and stuff. And yeah, this is game 3. So I'm on the draw here. We'll just get into it. So my opponent mulligans down to 6, I keep 7. Try and speed this up. I'm having the commentary muted for now just so I can talk over it. I'll give you the play-by-play of everything that happens during the game so you can keep up to speed with what's going on. Okay, here we go. Sorry, it's a bit slower than I remember. So he does keep his 6. So his hand is stage, Thoughtseize, Forest, Rotation, Bayou, Wasteland, and he puts the second stage on the bottom. He Thoughtseizes me off the Bayou, seeing Street Wraith, Preordain, Liliana the Last Hope, and Daze. And my 3 lands are Wasteland, Watery Grave, and a fetch. So he discards the Street Wraith with Thoughtseize, going to 18. The commentators point out that maybe he should have taken the Preordain there, and I kind of agree. I don't have any other turn 1 play apart from the Preordain. So he's kind of making me waste my mana if he takes that here. And just like Street Wraith, it's 1 extra card in the graveyard for Delve, and it also gives me much better card selection with the Scry 2. So this play only makes sense if he's really afraid of Death Shadow, which I don't even have in my hand yet right now. The chat also makes some kind of weird suggestions about, like, maybe this induces me to making a reanimate play or something like that, but none of those comments really make any sense. And I think the stream commentators were right to question this a bit. But anyway, I don't want to go on about that too much because that's not really what the point of this video is about. So I play the shock myself, and I play the Preordain, and I see Force of Will and another fetch land. I think it's a polluted delta, but it doesn't matter because all the fetches are equivalent in my deck anyway. And I keep both on top, so I scry the Force of Will onto the top and I draw it, and my next card down is the polluted delta. So now, just a reminder, my hand at this point is 2 Force of Wills, Daze, Liliana, Wasteland, and a fetch land. So I pass the turn back. My opponent draws a second crop rotation and plays. Sorry, my laptop's got a bit of a problem and these error messages keep popping up, but hopefully you can follow along. Anyway, my opponent just plays Forest and passes. I draw. My draw was the polluted delta. I have nothing else to do with my mana this turn. So I just play the Wasteland and pass. I have no idea what my top card is, so I have no reason to shuffle with the fetch land right now. And playing the Wasteland possibly plays around some shenanigans here. Like if he plays, if I don't play the Wasteland and he goes like, for example, maybe like Urborg, Hexmage, rotate for depths, then I could lose. Of course, I have a handful of counter magic, so my opponent's probably not going to do that, but maybe this keeps my hand disguised a little bit. And this doesn't really get punished by anything. Like he can play waste and waste my waste, but then I waste his Bayou back, and he's pretty behind from that point. Like that plays into days even more, so I don't really think there's any drawback to playing the Wasteland here. I guess it's pretty close. Anyway, so I passed the turn back. My opponent drew Elvish Reclaimer. So he plays the stage, and he plays Reclaimer off the forest. And then because my opponent's already shown me that they have the stage, I have no other interaction in my hand coming up for this Reclaimer, because of course Liliana can't kill it. So I Force of Will. I have an interesting decision here whether I want to pitch the second Force of Will or the Daze for this. I pitch the Daze. The reason is because my opponent's deck is mostly filled with 1 and 2 mana cards. So from this point in the game onwards, my opponent's made all their land drops. I don't think the Daze is likely to have very many targets, so I keep the second Force of Will just because I think it's a better value card in this situation. Then my opponent passes the turn back to me. Interestingly, I could have wasted there. I don't really think that achieves anything. If he has rotation, then he can play it still, so I'm not sure about that. And then again, I drew Dismember. And of course my opponent doesn't have any targets for that, but it does kind of punish me for Force of Willing the Elvish Reclaimer. I still think it was correct because I had no information on which cards were coming, but that's just how the game played out. Here my opponent drew Dark Confidant and they played it, and they played Wasteland from their hand. So my turn, I drew another Dismember. So right now my hand is Fetch, Liliana, Force of Will, Dismember, Dismember. So I play the second fetch. Sorry, I'm sure you can all hear my V8 Pentium 3 laptop right now, working hard to keep up with the stream. So hopefully it doesn't overheat and blow up on me. But if it does, you'll never know about it because I'll have to stop recording and try again later. Anyway, so I'm resolving both my fetch lands here. I make this sort of interesting decision to shock myself with 1 only. This puts me down to 13. The reason why I do this is because my hand is double Dismember, which is potentially going to require me to pay a lot of life in the upcoming turns. But the reason why I don't get 2 Underground Seas is because I'm about to play my Liliana and kill this Dark Confidant. The next turn I'm going to down tick it and bring the Street Wraith back, and then cycle the Street Wraith, which will put me to 11. So next turn I'm going to be able to play my Death Shadow if I happen to draw one when I do this, putting myself to 13. Whereas if I hadn't shocked here, I would still be at 15. And if I make that Street Wraith play next turn, I'll only go down to 13, and I won't be able to play my Death Shadow if I draw one. So that was the reasoning why I fetched this way. You could argue that maybe my life total was actually not that relevant and I should have just shocked twice. That's also a consideration, I think. But we'll see how the game plays out here. So yeah, I have 3 mana plus the Wasteland. So I tap out for the Liliana and I plus it, killing his Dark Confidant. So the question here is, well, firstly we can think about, was it correct to play this Liliana rather than the Dismember? And I think the answer is pretty clearly yes. Having the extra mana up to Dismember on my opponent's turn, because that's the only other thing I'm going to be able to do with it, only matters if they play Hexmage, because if they play something like Reclaimer, or I can just untap and Dismember that, or if they play another Dark Confidant, of course Liliana can just kill it, so that doesn't matter anyway. And if they do have Hexmage, they need another black source to play it, because they only have the Bayou right now. So if they go black source, tap the 2 lands, play the Hexmage, then they have untapped will be Stage, Forest, Wasteland, and then in that case they've already used their land drop to play the black source, or they rotate for Urborg to play the Hexmage down, and if they have depths in their hand already. But you'll see that if they have depths in their hand already, my play here is kind of already forced anyway. So yeah, there's not really any reason not to play the Liliana here. So I play the Liliana, and I plus on the Bob and it dies. So then the question now is, what do I want to do with this Wasteland? So I can hold it and just pass the turn to my opponent and never crack it until I wait for them to do something. I can crack it right now and kill their Thespian stage, or I can let them untap and then crack the Wasteland on their stage in their upkeep. So those are basically the 3 options that I have right now available to me. So to decide which of those decisions is correct, we kind of have to think about what are the relevant cards the opponent could have. Basically we're only worried about them comboing, right? So a second stage doesn't really help them if I don't waste, because they already have 1. So that doesn't really make a difference. Depths matters obviously, because depths plus stage lets them make the 20/20, so we need to think about if they have depths. And the other card that we need to worry about them having is Crop Rotation, which can find any one of the 2 combo pieces. So I don't think there's any other card they could have in their deck that matters. Like if they have Hexmage, for example, it doesn't do anything on this board. They need to have the depths or the Crop Rotation already to find the other thing that combos with the Hexmage. So by thinking about rotation and depths, we're already covering the situation with Hexmage. If they draw a trophy for my Wasteland, that only matters if they also have depths, so we don't really need to think about that either. And then if they draw any random creature like a Reclaimer or another Bob, we have the Dismembers to handle that, or the Liliana. And then again, if they draw like Thoughtseize, well, then there's nothing, then they can't combo us, but there's nothing really interesting they can do with that either. They just Thoughtseize me and take my Force of Will. So that's kind of the situation we're in now. We're only really thinking about depths and crop rotation, so let's work through the different situations. So if they have depths, then they're gonna untap with, if they have depths and I do nothing, then they just go to their main phase and play depths. Then they have depths, stage, bayou, forest, wasteland. So they just waste my wasteland, then I waste back in response, and then they just tap the forest and the bayou and activate the stage, and they make a 20/20 and I lose. So if I suspect that they have depths, or if I'm worried that they have depths, then I can't let them go to their main phase. So what happens if I wasteland them in their upkeep? Well, they have stage and forest now. So if I do that, they can tap the bayou and the forest, or the forest and the wasteland, whatever. They activate stage, copying their forest. Now their stage is basic land and it will fizzle the wasteland. So that's not a very good play either, because if they have depths and I do that, their stage will be tapped going into their main phase, so they won't be able to make the 20/20 this turn, but it only buys me one more turn, so I have to either find another wasteland or like a submerge or anything like that. So it basically gives me only one more turn to do it, because my hand is just blanks right now. It doesn't help against any of what that setup would do. So if I wasteland my opponent right now, and they have depths in their hand, then all they can do is just play the depths. Then they have bayou, forest, wasteland, depths, and that doesn't really help them do anything. So if I suspect my opponent has just depths and a brick, then what I should do is wasteland them now, before they untap. So that's one option. If I suspect my opponent has one crop rotation, so let's think about what happens there. If they just have one crop rotation and a brick, then I wasteland them now on the stage. They'll rotate that away probably for a depths. Then at that point they can win, but they need to either top deck another stage, or a Hex Mage and a Black Source. So from there, I think my odds are like reasonably good. So again, if I think they have one crop rotation and a brick, and I let them go to their upkeep, and I try and waste them in their upkeep, they can just make the play of copying their forest again. So that doesn't really make too much sense. If they have one crop rotation and a brick, and I just pass with the wasteland up, what they can do is, in their own main phase, after they untap, they can just hardcast the crop rotation, sacrificing the bayou, leaving forest and wasteland untapped, and then at that point, what will I do? So they will have depths, forest, waste untapped with the crop rotation on the stack. So if I let that resolve and he gets depths, then if I try and wasteland the depths, he can activate the stage in response to make the 20/20 and I die. Same thing if I try and waste the stage. But my opponent, at the same time, my opponent can't activate it yet because I'll waste in response, and he'll lose his combo. So we're kind of in like a stalemate at that point. But the moment my opponent top decks another mana source, like even if he drew it that turn, then he can make the play of wasting my waste first, and then it'll be like in the same situation as if he just top decked the depths. So Yeah, so if he has one crop rotation, and I let him hardcast it, and I let it resolve without responding, then he only needs to top deck one more land, and then then he will get to make the 2020. Whereas I need to draw another wasteland or like an edict or a submerge. So that's not the best situation for me. He's more likely to find a untapped land before I find one of my few answers to a merit large. So if he does main phase the crop rotation, and I try to waste his stage in response with the crop rotation on the stack, then remember he still has the forest and the waste untapped, so he can activate the stage copying the forest, and it will fizzle my wasteland again. So everything will be tapped. He'll have taps. The bio will be gone because he sacked it. The stage will be tapped, now copying forest. Forest will be tapped, waste will be tapped, and his depths will come into play. So again, this only gives me one turn to draw out like another wasteland or the edict or whatever, because my wasteland will be gone now, and he can just untap next turn and make the 2020 again. So that's not good. So if he has one crop rotation and a brick, which is the situation we've just been talking about, and I waste him right now before he untaps, then he will tap the forest and rotate the stage away in response before my wasteland resolves. And did I already go over this? I don't know. Maybe I'm just talking around in circles now. Anyway, yeah. So he'll rotate and get the depths. Yeah, I did already mention this. So at that point he's top decking to find either another stage or the black source plus the hex mage. So again, it seems like if he has one rotation and blank, then still the best play for me to do is to wasteland right now before he untaps. If my opponent has double depths, well, that's no different to if they only have one depths. I still have to wasteland them right now. What happens if they have double crop rotation? If I wasteland them right now, they will tap the forest, sack the target of my wasteland, which is the stage, and they'll get another stage. Then in their upkeep, they will will they have enough mana to do that? Yeah, they would. Yeah, so they would untap. They would have this exact same mana-based stage, Bayou, Forest, Waste. Then they would just rotate the Bayou away for depths and tap these two and make the 2020. So if they have two crop rotations, and I waste now, then he makes the 2020 on his turn, and this is like out of all the situations so far, this is like the worst for me because he gets to make the 2020 as soon as he safely as soon as he untaps. But again, this is like a more difficult situation for him, right? Because he needs to have double rotation. So if he does have double crop rotation, and I just pass, then it's basically the same as if he only has one crop rotation and I passed, right? Because we already went over that. It's just like the same situation, but he has one additional more option. So he can untap main phase the main phase 1 rotation, and then we've already been over this. So if he main phases his rotation, and then I waste the stage in response, then he can copy the forest. If I don't waste, then he gets the depths and just waits until he draws another mana source, and then I die again. So let's recap. So if my opponent has depths in hand, then I have to waste now. If I wait until his main phase, then I die. And if I try and waste in his upkeep, then he can blank my waste by copying forest. If my opponent has 1 crop rotation, and I wait until upkeep, he can... Yeah, if my opponent has 1 crop rotation and I waste an upkeep, again, he can blank my waste by copying forest. If I wait until his main phase, he can rotate his Bayou away. If I waste in response, he can... If I waste in response, he can copy the forest. If I don't waste, then he gets stage, depths, forest, wasteland, all untapped. Then if I waste at that point, he combos off. If I don't waste, he just needs to draw 1 more mana source, and then he can kill me. So, but if he only has 1 crop rotation and I wasteland him now, then he has to rotate his stage away for a depths and then try to top deck. If my opponent has 2 crop rotations and I wasteland him now, then he will rotate 1 target away now and rotate again in his turn and immediately make the 20/20. If my opponent has 2 rotations and I just pass, then it's just like the same thing as if my opponent only had 1 rotation. So he'll just main phase a rotation, and then it's whatever happens first. Either he draws a mana source, or I draw Edict, or a Submerge or something, or a second Wasteland, which I think is the situation that favors him. So on the balance of all of these considerations, so what I decided to do was, so here my Liliana's on 4 counters. I wasteland his stage. So if you've been following through all that rambling at this point, you'll know that his hand is double rotation. So and if you followed that whole conversation, you know that what this means is that he untaps and makes a 20/20, and I don't top deck and I die. So interestingly, I put myself at 13 here because of the rationalization I just made. And what this means is that if I hardcast the Dismember on the Marit Lage, it goes to 15 power. And then if I plus the Liliana on it, it goes to 13, so I die exactly. If I double Dismember on the Marit Lage and then also uptick Liliana on it, then it loses 12 power and goes to 8 power. But I need to pay 6 life for the double Dismember, so I'm on 7 and I die again. So if I'd been more conservative with my fetching, my shocking myself, then I would have 1 more turn to top deck. And the other problem here is that he, after making the 20/20, his last card is a Bajuka Bog, which he just drew for the turn. So it exiles my Street Wraith and I can't cantrip off my Liliana. So that also messed me up. But I couldn't help myself and I looked at my top few cards at the end of the game and I wouldn't have got there anyway. So yeah, I do think I made the right play. I'll just let this play out. I do think I made the right play, wasting the stage there for all of the reasons that I've just gone over. I mean, sorry if my thoughts weren't so organized, but I think you can follow along with that. The only other thing to consider is that the play of him main phasing the crop rotation is not so obvious. So like you can make the argument that maybe you know, I could just leave the Wasteland untapped, and then hope that he doesn't see that line. But that definitely loses if he has depths, and I don't think the way that he sequenced his turns up to that point has given me any information that makes me think he has either a crop rotation or a depths. Like, he's made all his land drops up to that point. He could still definitely be holding on to a depths, but like in the same vein, he's been like leaving green mana up when he, you know, plays Elvish Reclaimer. I haven't really given him any opportunities to use crop rotation yet. He hasn't really had those opportunities yet. So I think the chance of him having a rotation or a depth here are like roughly similar. I'm pretty sure they're both 4-ops in his deck list. So based on all of that, I do think I made the right move there. Wasting the stage while it was still tapped. The commentators did not agree, and they put on the simple plan. How could this happen to me while I'm like tanking hard here? First of all, like, Simon and Garfunkel, Sound of Silence is a much better choice if you want to make that kind of joke, I think. And then secondly, maybe they were wrong. But yeah, I'd be interested to hear if you have any more thoughts on this whole situation, or whether you have any other information to consider that would push your decision in a different direction. The one other thing to consider was me wasting the stage on that earlier turn. When exactly was that? I think here. He plays the stage. Yeah, this is his turn 3. So he played the stage and then plays Reclaimer off the forest. So the argument not to waste here, especially because I'm about to force of will this Reclaimer, is that I think that it's bad if my opponent has Hexmage in hand. Because I don't... If my opponent's hand is like Depths plus Hexmage, and I waste the stage, he could just play that out and win the game. Especially because I've just burned my Force of Will. So I think that's probably a good enough reason not to waste here. But that's the I think the only other spot where it really makes sense. So I just want to speed this up and see if there's any other thing to think about. This is me thinking about my Force of Will. So I draw here. I could just like main phase, waste the stage. Yeah, because if I do that and he goes like rotate it away, untap Black Source Hexmage, then I just lose. So I don't think that would have been right. But I mean, I'm sort of trying to like post hoc rationalize it a little bit here, so maybe it's not quite the most fair analysis, but I do think in hindsight that blade made sense. Anyway, yeah, I don't want to sound like I'm being like too bitter towards the Grey Ogre commentators or anything, because I honestly think they do a really good job, especially not necessarily today, but like the last month, when I top 4 that tournament as well, and I played on camera both in top 4 and in the Swiss. I think the commentators did have like a pretty insightful things to say about like my cantrip sequencing in one of the games, and I think they were right, and I could have done a bit better. I'm not going to pull that up for you because it was kind of a while ago and I can't really be bothered. And I don't think it was that interesting. But yeah, in general, I just want to say that they're quite knowledgeable and they generally do a pretty good job and they keep everybody entertained. And I also want to say that like if you're ever on camera in Grey Ogre, or like if you're playing online and you can record your own games, or if you're like really hardcore and you would want to like record your own games just when you're testing with friends or something, obviously it can be a really good learning tool if you go back and analyze your plays. You can often find some new information or some new things to think about that you might have not been able to focus on or keep track of in the moment. So I've got to thank Grey Ogre Games for giving the opportunity to go back and review all of this gameplay. So yeah, that's all for today. As you can see, I'm getting some happy birthday messages because it's my birthday today. Happy birthday to me. But yeah, that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed that, learned something. Like and subscribe. I'll catch you guys later.